The sun broke over the horizon, and with it, the dust of their return settled thick upon the land. The wind dragged whispers of forgotten battles through the barrows of the past. Edgar squinted against the light, eyes scanning the desolation that lay before him. He had not come back a hero. He was a ghost of what he once was. The ashes of his brother's laughter haunted the air, a bitter reminder shimmering beneath the morning sky. The sheriff hadn't spoken in days. He was tracking something older than guilt. The wind cut like judgment. The sun boiled the bones. The very land seemed to hold its breath, watching as Edgar and his brother Tybalt rode into the sun-bleached village. Dust swirled around their horses' hooves, as if it would shield them from the weight of their reality. "Is it over, then?" Tybalt's voice broke the silence, a cautious note in the midst of an indifferent breeze. "If it were over, we wouldn't be here," Edgar replied, his tone flat as the terrain stretched before them. The ground was a graveyard for memories. The road wound like a serpent, spitting gravel and regret. They passed the village square, where only silence greeted them. Shadows of homes still stood, mere skeletons wrapped in whispers. Tybalt shifted uneasily in the saddle, eyes darting to the branches overhead, swaying like weary fingers clutching at the sky. "It should have looked different." Edgar nodded, sorrow wrapped tight around his chest. The dust settled heavily on their shoulders. Behind them lay a crusade fought across borders, a relentless yearning to carry forth the holy light, and yet here lay nothing but ashes. Their first stop brought them face to face with memories turned to smoke. They dismounted before a charred building where flickers of flames once devoured structure and spirit. The air hung thick with the scent of despair. Charred beams stretched upward like desperate hands grappling for the heavens. Edgar felt the familiarity of history unrested. As they stood amidst the ruins, something flickered within Tybalt. "It's not just the buildings, it's the weight of it all, Edgar. We're hollow." Edgar faced his brother, his voice caught somewhere between sorrow and strength. "Then we rebuild what we can, from what remains." But hope seemed a fragile thread aching to snap. The village was darker than the stories they had told themselves. In their next encounter, they found a place still lived in, but the warmth of a home was choked by the sharp edge of uncertainty. The tax collector stood waiting, his arms crossed, eyes squinting with distrust. "Who do you think you are?" he barked, his voice slicing through the silence like a knife. "We're of this land," Edgar declared, but the collector only shrugged, dismissing them as specters of a past long buried. "This land left you. We don't recognize ghosts here," he quipped, his eyes hard as stone, pressed into the memory of a time before they departed for glory. Edgar's heart sank. They were not heroes anymore. No honorable title could cloak the truth. The tax collector returned to his ledger, turning his back on them, even as the memory of their brotherhood lingered in the dust. The brothers rode away, shadows weighed down by the burden of betrayal and despair. Edgar caught glimpses of the past, weaving through the streets, the laughter, the camaraderie, the fervor of belief now nothing more than fading echoes, a specter haunting his every thought. They pressed on, their journey now, a pilgrimage through loss. At the crossroads, darkness threatened to swallow them whole, until a flicker of life caught their attention. A woman stood at a threshold. Her presence cut through the haze like the stars on a moonless night. The moment Tybalt's eyes met hers, raw recognition pulled at his heart. "You're alive," she breathed, disbelief rushing through her voice. 3 years, she continued, a gulp catching in her throat. I prayed for you. Her words faltered, dangling like the remnants of a promise lost in the wind. I had to come back, he whispered, reaching for her. But she stepped back, and the distance throbbed between them, a painful reminder of what was lost. Can you even call it home when you've forgotten what it means? She replied, the bravado shading her voice. Silence settled like dust and pain twisted in the air. Gathering around a fire that night, the brothers and Guillaume sat under the vast, star-specked sky. Each man bore the scars of sacrifice. Thibault looked at Guillaume, who had carried their banner through it all, watchful and stoic. What now? Thibault asked, breaking the heavy silence that hung over them like fog. Guillaume's gaze fixed on the flames. Then, with a heavy heart, he tossed the banner into the fire. This is no longer for us, he said, watching the fire consume what was left of their ideals. They sat in silence as the twilight shrank around them. Each crackle of flame conveyed a story long overdue, a wound reopening. The heat washed over them, but the warmth of brotherhood could not breach the distance forged by regret. Serge, a veteran hardened by years, reached down and pulled free a blade shimmering in the embers. I bury the past. The weight it carries is too much to bear. He thrust the blade deep into the soil, leaving its steel to fade into dust and memory. What becomes of us now? Edgar spoke, his voice softened by the shadows that enveloped them. Their eyes met the darkness. There were no heroes on this land, only those who survived. Only men wandering towards nothingness, searching for echoes of voices long silenced. And in that moment, the weight of their struggles laid heavy upon them. They were not noble crusaders returned. They were specters drifting through their own stories, searching for signs of life in a graveyard of forgotten hopes. The fire shifted, and with it, the shadows began to dance. The wind swept through the trees surrounding them, and silenced cries tangled with forlorn memories. When Edgar turned away, it was as though he could feel the land itself weeping with him as he disappeared into the woods beyond. Amidst the thick trunks, branches twisted overhead, and he finally thought to himself, "Where have you brought me?" The wilderness wrapped him tight, carrying secrets and invisible burdens unfathomable, even in the solitude of nature. As he gazed into the pond that lay still like glass, he saw not just his reflection, but the reflections of choices made through blood and honor. What does a lost warrior do? He whispered into the silence, hoping for an answer that would not come. But the pond remained mute, rippling only before the wind's breath. Echoes of laughter, long faded, mingled with the calls of unseen birds. And in that peace, it became clear every man fights his own war. Yet the scars remain eternal, engraved in the fabric of fate. The trees around him stood silent, witnesses to battles never fought, lovers forsaken, tales of courage and cowardice interwoven. Even the forest seemed to mourn, carrying the burden and sighing with him into the night. He emerged from the woods, standing alone within the vastness of the land that now felt like it belonged to no one. The landscape stretched infinitely, a canvas of pain painted with memory and grief. The ground breathed beneath him, a living testament to struggles endured and shadows faced. Edgar looked out over the horizon where the darkness met the sky. In the stillness, the landscape whispered its secrets, and he understood that the land remembers everything. There, in the quiet dusk of regret, he felt the ghosts of his journey wrap around him like a shroud. As the stars blinked into an evening haze, a speck of fire in the fresco of night, he felt the reality of his existence fold over him. He had not come home. He had become one with the whispers of the hills and trails, a haunting presence carved stark against the shadows. Maybe, he thought, the true journey was never about finding home, but about embracing the shapes of loss and the ghosts that lingered. And standing in the twilight, he found an unspeakable resolve rising within. If his path must forge into the inevitable darkness, let it serve as a beacon for those who dared come after. If this story stirred something deep within you, beckoning you toward the stories yet unsung, follow the next trail with us by subscribing to Medieval Stories. Together we'll wander through the echoes of time and relive the tales that bind us to our past. He turned away from the sprawling view, the weight of the past sipping at his resolve, and ventured where the forest's embrace grew thick. Each rustle among the leaves whispered names of those who fell silent under foreign skies. Each heel toe on the dirt brought forth memories of laughter that met with swords drawn in loyalty, now turned to shadows fighting against time. The forest deepened, lending him its dense darkness. The trees stood somber and constant, and as night fell, the air grew cold, threading through the bark with the touch of chilled regret. Edgar stumbled across a clearing that opened like a wound, the moon casting silvery moonlight that drew stark lines over the jagged earth. Underneath the watchful eye of the cosmos, he sank to the ground. Memories bloomed, violent yet beautiful, a torrent of faces, a tide of emotions, a battlefield. Far removed from this tranquil horror, he now found himself navigating. Amongst the drifting shadows, he could see his friends again, their faces illuminated against the firelight, the sound of their voices mingling with laughter. "We were fighting for something," Guillaume had said, "for our brothers, our land. We returned to save it." But what did a return mean when the only constant was the emptiness that welcomed them? The thoughts settled uncomfortably, an echo reverberating through the chambers of his restless heart. He raised his eyes to the heavens, the stars pinpricks of light stuck against a sea of darkness, flickering. Was it worth it? He questioned the night. The silence scowled back. They had ventured from dust to glory's heights, and now abandonment. In the distant rustle of the foliage, he heard footsteps. A figure emerged, small against the shadows, and as the moon revealed contours, Edgar squinted, readying himself for a confrontation with whatever specter haunted this part of the night. It was a child, no more than 10, rain-slick hair and eyes wide like moonlit pools. "What brings you here, stranger?" Edgar tilted his head, weighing his words. "I wander," he replied simply. The child stepped closer, shoulders taut with the unspoken weight. Wandering does not feed the soil. Curiosity flickered in Edgar's chest, trying to spark amid the ashes of his heart. "What do you mean?" "They say the land remembers. It eats our dead and breathes life into their stories. So, it remembers the heroes?" Edgar pressed. The child shook his head solemnly. "Heroes become echoes. They are swallowed by the earth. Are you a hero?" Edgar fell silent, the weight of his unworthiness pinning him to the cold ground. "No, I'm just a man." "Then you are haunted," the child said, voice steely yet innocent. "You will walk these woods until you find your light again." "Where do I look?" he murmured. "Wherever you've buried the truth of yourself." The child turned and began to disappear into the thickness of the branches, but before vanishing completely, he paused. "I will be waiting in the stories." The last words hung heavy in the air, a shroud of expectancy bearing the warmth of his intricacy. Edgar rose, shaken but emboldened. He had been asking all the wrong questions. Perhaps it was not about finding home, but seeking the light still unseen. He pressed deeper into the woods, where night rippled and tangled his thoughts with its embrace. The trees grew taller, older, each twisted limb a testament to time bending under the weight of grief. Shadows played tricks on his mind. Visions of his past danced just beyond the flicker in his eye. He reached a brook where the ground was wet and slick, the waters shimmering like shattered glass under the moon's gaze. Falling to his knees, he cupped his hands and drank deep. The liquid quenched his thirst, but could not cleanse his spirit of doubts. His mind turned once more to his brother, to the nights spent fighting side by side, to the loyalty that once thrummed strong in their veins. They had offered themselves to something larger, but now, in the depths of solitude, he wondered if they had merely fed into a relentless cycle they could not control. At dawn, he would seek Tybalt once more, confront what had been left unsaid, what agony had replaced their camaraderie. Before the sun broke through, he wanted to make peace within, to unearth the truth buried beneath expectations and shame. As the stars began to fade and the first light pushed through the trees, Edgar stood, understanding the urgency that clung to him now. He stepped over the roots and rocks that littered the ground, moving with a newfound sense of purpose. Each footfall came closer to where he hoped to meet his brother. Morning light unfurled like a flag signaling change. The air grew warm against the coolness of the night's remnants, the sigh of dawn chasing the shadows farther into the recesses of the woods. Each moment brought steadiness, each breath becoming a reminder of life's tenacity. When he finally broke through the thicket and into the clearing they had camped the night before, he found Tybalt seated by the dying embers, face worn but resolute. The fire had given way to a soft glow and smoldering ashes. "Tybalt," Edgar called, approaching with purpose. "We need to talk." Tybalt's eyes rose sharply, and for a moment Edgar saw the uncertainty flicker there. "You found your way back?" "I think so," Edgar murmured, seated beside him. "We've lost everything," Tybalt said, shaking his head, defeat lingering in the corners of his voice. "Maybe, but we are still here. We're still alive. That's not enough. Not if we've lost them." Edgar caught his gaze. "We may not have returned the heroes we thought we would be, but we are still brothers. There's still time to find ourselves again." Tybalt's expression shifted, uncertainty replaced with cautious hope. The shadows, once heavy with despair, began to lift as the realization settled. They had a chance, no, just for understanding between them, but to reclaim what life still offered. The flicker of recognition sparked between them. Together, they would trace the paths forever altered, seek redemption, and weave strength from past shortcomings. It would not be easy, but alongside brotherhood, they would confront their ghosts with newly lit spirits, ready to face whatever shadows lie ahead. With renewed vigor, they rose together, steeling themselves for the journey before them. For it was not about returning with glory, but learning to be whole amidst the ruins. And in that moment of awakening, Edgar felt the past blow away like dried leaves carried by the wind. He knew they would wander under the open sky, where every horizon beckoned new possibilities, and the stories of hardships faced and victories lived would meld into their own woven, into the expansive tapestry of a life fully lived. In that anticipation hung a new dawn, a chance to break free. The journey ahead was theirs to write, with every step laden with lessons, echoes of courage that would not soon fade. As the sun rose bright and golden, they strode into the path of their becoming. This chapter may have ended, but the tale continued. And dear traveler, if your heart stirred with the cadence of their journey, follow the whispers and subscribe to Medieval Stories. Together, we shall wander through tales woven in time, crafting our own legends. As the sun carved its way higher into the morning sky, casting long shadows through the trees, Edgar and Tybalt moved with purpose, side by side on the path forged from uncertainty. Each step resonated with the weight of their shared past and the promise of redemption, forcing the air around them to shimmer with unspoken potential. They ventured deeper into the heart of their memories, guided by the echoes of voices once familiar. The forest loomed around them, both a sanctuary and a prison, cradling the remnants of what they had lost. Yet today, they would seek not only the phantoms that haunted them, but the truths hidden beneath the silence of their hearts. With every crumbling leaf that rustled beneath their feet, another whisper of their journey pushed them onward. In the distance, the faint sound of water trickling provided a steady rhythm, beckoning them toward what lay beyond the trees, a river they had once known during their childhood. The brothers exchanged glances as they approached the banks. The sunlight danced upon the water's surface, fractures of brilliance breaking up the chaos beneath. Tybalt hesitated before stepping closer, recalling a time when laughter had filled the air and the river had been a playground, not a witness to their despair. "Remember when we'd race each other to the big rock?" Tybalt mused, a hint of a smile breaking through the weight of sorrow. Edgar nodded, his heart swelling with a rush of nostalgia. "And I always cheated." Their laughter echoed through the trees, and in that moment, they were not just brothers bound by blood, but two boys entwined in the innocence of youth. The world around them shifted, reminding them that between the burdens they bore existed memories filled with light. Tybalt knelt at the water's edge, fingertips tracing the cool surface. "It seems like a lifetime ago," he murmured, the gentleness of the memory intertwining with the melancholy of their present. "But we need to find a bridge back to who we were." As the river flowed ceaselessly, Edgar felt the current pulling at him, a reminder of the passage of time, of lives lived both wonderfully and regrettably. He stepped forward, imbuing the moment with resolute purpose. "We don't have to find the same path, but we can carve a new one. We can reclaim what they took from us." The determination echoed through their tangled hearts. Tybalt stood, letting the sun breathe warmth into his spirit. "You're right. It's time we built rather than buried." Together, they stood at the river, a symbol of both continuity and change. No longer would they allow the ghosts of their past to dictate their future. Through this recognition, a surge of possibility coursed between them, intertwining their fates anew. As they turned from the riverbanks, the terrain changed. The trees began to thin, revealing a clearing populated with remnants of a long-abandoned cottage. It sagged into the earth, doomed to decay, but there existed a beauty in its ruined, the weathered wood, a testament to resilience. The surrounding vines, a gentle embrace. "What do you think happened here?" Tybalt pondered aloud, stepping closer. Edgar shrugged, a hint of admiration breaking through. "Perhaps a family once flourished under this very roof. Laughter filled these walls, but storms come. They always do." They exchanged knowing looks storm after storm. They had felt the relentless hammers of fate, washing away comforts they had once taken for granted. But within every storm lies the chance for rebirth. Tybalt kicked up debris from the ground, revealing small stones and remnants of a forgotten hearth. We can learn from those who walked this land before, can't we? The tremor in Edgar's chest echoed with agreement. They could honor those lost without allowing themselves to drown. We can use this place, turn it into part of our journey. And so they set to work, each bringing to bear a lifetime of lessons they'll build, to create rather than to mourn. With each stone laid and branch secured, they rediscovered the strength once dulled by suffering. Hands roughened and calloused from weights previously borne spoke of their dedication. Carefully, they breathed new life into the cottage, resurrecting memories of community from the silence of abandonment. For within these swaying vines and a humble abode, they could nurture hope, not just for themselves, but for the lives torn apart by violence and decay. Days turned into weeks as they threw themselves into the labor of healing. The structure, once lifeless, throbbed with vibrancy as if the earth itself welcomed their hands. They built a new hearth, collecting stories. As they worked, Tybalt spoke of childhood dreams of the horizon, while Edgar spun yarns of courage found among those who had guided them. Every stone laid was infused, not just with purpose, but with love, a connection binding back to their roots and ahead toward a future ripe with possibility. With each moment, they began to weave together a life they could be proud of, a sanctuary that echoed the laughter of the children who had splashed their feet in the river. As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in deep hues of purple and gold, Tybalt and Edgar stood before their creation, the air heavy with satisfaction. "This isn't just a place in the woods. This is our beginning," Tybalt said, the weight of his dreams glowing in his eyes. Edgar nodded, his heart lighter than it had been since returning from the war. "A new story is being written here, one that will reflect who we truly are." With the night settled around them, they shared tales under the stars, laughter breaking the solemn stillness of what had been. Each word launched into the darkness became a seed for hope to grow and flourish as they recognized with each breath that the narratives shaping their futures had not yet fully formed. There remained challenges ahead, echoes of the past, still compelling them to confront their fears and memories. But they now had the bond forged anew, promising them strength. They would face whatever storm brewed on the horizon together, and as the fire crackled into the infinity of the night, they knew the scars of their journey would shape not just who they had become, but who they would choose to be. As they drifted into sleep, side by side at their newfound home, they felt something stir beneath the surface, an assurance that they could rise with the dawn, renewed in purpose, hope threading through every intention they harbored. Each morning would reveal new paths, fresh lessons to learn, and adventures waiting just beyond their door. If this story resonated within the chambers of your heart and whispered to you of journeys yet traveled, of lessons yet to be learned, follow the call of time and subscribe to Medieval Stories. Together, we will explore the depths of history and craft tales that echo across the ages. As the weeks slipped silently by, a rhythm settled into the newly revived cottage. Each dawn brought with it clarity and focus, and the air hummed with the scent of earth and promise. Edgar and Tybalt immersed themselves in the tasks of rebuilding, not for mere shelter, but forging a sanctuary that embodied their shared resilience. The forest became their ally, offering timber and wild herbs, while the neighboring landscape gifted them the bounty of its resources. They forged tools from rock and iron, hands steady, vision unwavering. Shadows of the past taunted them intermittently, but each evening, as the embers glowed, they found solace in their stories, allowing laughter to light the darkness. Do you ever wonder what lies beyond these trees? Tybalt mused one afternoon while chiseling away at a makeshift bench. He paused, glancing toward the horizon where the woods thickened into mystery. Edgar wiped the sweat from his brow and considered the depths of his brother's question. There's a world beyond these woods, vast and alive. But what's here feels like home now, doesn't it? The words lingered in the air, heavy with both promise and uncertainty. Tierra, a neighboring village rumored to be nestled beyond the trees, whispered to them in their quiet moments. Stories of joy, pain, and love emerged from the villagers who had survived storms of their own, tales that tugged at their hearts and beckoned them to join the world beyond. Perhaps we should visit, Tybalt replied slowly. After all, what is a home if we do not know what exists beyond our own four walls? Then we shall, Edgar agreed, a spark igniting in his soul. Let's find out what others have done to rise from the ashes. Those words ignited a fire, not only in their hearts, but fueled their desires to connect with the land and its people, to learn, to share, to break the chains of solitude that threatened to bind them. As dawn broke on the day of their departure, they packed provisions, what little they could gather, and set out toward the unknown. The path ahead welcomed them like an old friend, yet shrouded in the uncertainty of what lay beyond every bend. Birdsong trilled above them, a sweet symphony of nature guiding their every step. Tybalt paused for a moment, raising his hand to the sky. This is life, Edgar, he breathed. Life is more than the walls we've built. They journeyed forth, the thrill of discovery mingling with trepidation. The land opened up around them, hues of green and earthy browns, a stark contrast against the crispness in the morning air. Each mile passed stirred ember-like anticipation in their chests, an unquenchable thirst for connection and understanding. When they finally arrived at Tierra, its breath of life enveloped Thema, bustling community, swathed in warmth, glimmers of laughter spilling forth into the streets, bustling with families. The sights and sounds flooded them, engulfing their senses. Here was life, something they had thought lost, now thriving before their very eyes. Children darted about in playful pursuits, their laughter spiraling into the air like birds set free. Merchants hawked their wares, concocting a tapestry of sounds and scents that invited the brothers to partake. The warm aroma of freshly baked bread mingled with the sharp scent of herbs, a feast for the senses that enveloped their weary souls. I didn't realize how much I missed this, Tybalt confessed, a soft smile creeping across his face. Edgar nodded, absorbing the vitality around him. The heartbeat of community, the bond, forged here, fuels our own journey. As they ventured deeper into the village, villagers greeted them curiously, but with welcoming gestures, as if sensing the heat of desire for connection burning in their hearts. They soon encountered a small group gathered around a storyteller in the town square, captivated by his presence. The man spoke with fervor, weaving tales of heroes and lost souls, of laughter and sacrifice. They listened intently, as if each word was a lifeline threading through the grief of memory. Tybalt leaned closer, drawn in by the rhythm of the stories, the cadence that beckoned listeners to imagine worlds beyond their own. So, you've come from the woods? The storyteller finally asked, eyes sharp and bright, surveying the brothers as if they were kindred spirits in the night. You carry your own tales, don't you? Edgar felt the weight of his journey settle in that moment. We have, yes, we've walked paths of sorrow but found purpose in rebuilding our home. The storyteller smiled, not with pity, but recognition, an understanding rooted in shared experiences. Every tale is a tapestry, woven from truth and choice. Perhaps you will share your own soon? Something shifted in the air, an unspoken promise threading through the village. The fire sparked in Edgar's heart. This was not merely an encounter, but an invitation to belong, a chance to share their own narrative with those who understood the weight of loss and the power of resurgence. As the sun dipped low in the sky, they joined the evening festivities, laughter spilling over like grains of loose sand. With each shared meal, with each moment, they felt the barriers dissolve, finding kinship in their shared experiences. The journey wasn't just about the past. It was a recalibration of purpose. Tybalt and Edgar stood at the center of it all, laughter ringing in the air, a promise trailing behind the realization that life continued to flow stronger than ever. Being part of something greater made them whole once again, realizing that sharing their stories together could forge new connections, new paths, and the possibility of a life beyond mere survival beckoned to them. As twilight painted the landscape red and gold, Edgar turned to the people surrounding him and spoke with newfound assurance. Thank you for your warmth, your stories, the embrace of community. We hope to share our own journeys as we travel together. And though their past remained a weight they would carry, the promise of shared stories forged through fellowship, laughter, and understanding became the light lighting their new path ahead. As the stars shone bright overhead, illuminating the bond that enveloped them, it became clear their journey was more than just a search for healing. It was about rediscovering joy, hope, and the ties that bind us, reminding them that every story is worth telling. If you find yourself captivated by the characters and tales we weave, longing to explore even deeper, subscribe to Medieval Stories. Join us as we traverse the pathways of history, uncovering those lost voices that whisper to us from the shadows of time.